So I hope you had a nice short holiday, that 2 week holiday. Um, we, I think what I'll look at the moment is exactly what we have, what we are going to look at over the 12 weeks or so. Um, at the moment, we have agreed that we do online, but in the event that you do feel otherwise, or you want to mix, or you want to do, you can communicate that. Oh, I'm not very audible. That is interesting. Let me see. Let me see my microphone. Yeah, I think I had my microphone settings. My microphone settings. This what could be. Just 1 second. My microphone has been very good. I don't know what has happened. Does that apply to everybody, or just some people are having problem with my microphone hearing me? Am I low to everybody? That's the first thing I should find out. Can somebody else tell me whether I'm low, the volume is low or something before I start? Oh, so it could be that when I go to sound settings, let me see microphone. Because my microphone is 100%. That's what I was thinking. I think probably you could be having a problem. The person who knows that can't hear me well. Uh, but nonetheless, I'll try to check later what could be the issue. But at the moment, I think just bear with me. Um, so we'll be looking at this unit, and today we are going to look at what the unit entails. Um, and sometimes I don't know. I asked you that question last week because you have these other units for FE 421 and 422. 421 and 422. Now, I was trying to find out because sometimes when we are covering some of these things, we start from zero. So sometimes I like knowing exactly what you have covered in 422 and 421. Can the class rep send me the outline of 421 and 422?
I will.
You will, eh?
Yes.
Yes, I will appreciate. Because sometimes it's good to know what you have not done so that I can give it more attention. So, this the objective of this course will mainly be to understand the fundamental concept of entropy and its application in communication. You're likely to meet this term entropy. Well, in this course, you're not likely to meet it elsewhere, but entropy is also done in mechanical. But when you look at entropy, in electrical or communication uh, is all about uh, the rate of information, the average rate of information. So we'll be looking at concept of entropy and see how uh, its application in communication, because it has a very um, important application, because one, it can help us uh, be able to attain compression. We are going to see if you encode using the entropy of symbols as a basis, if you're going to look at, you can actually be able to achieve uh, lossless compression. So we'll be looking at that in this unit. Then the next objective, and basically that forms almost a third of the course, yeah, and it's quite short. That one I think we can cover in 3 weeks. Then uh, the next one is understand, analyze, and apply. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not sharing my screen. I forgot to share my screens. Thanks, thanks for that. Let me see. Yeah, I was not sharing my screen, so let me do that. Mhm. Now I believe I'm sharing my screen. So, yeah. So the objective, second objective, as I said, that first objective, basically the land of the course. Uh, then the second objective is to understand, analyze, and apply error control codes. We'll spend some time here because uh, the topic of error detection and correction is a big one in digital communications. Uh, and we are basically going to look at the digital communication case Sorry about that. We had lost the connection. I was trying to get an alternative connection, but the connection came back. Maybe um, so let me get back to sharing. Sorry about that. Basically, that is the problem of online. We rely on technology, which sometimes is not very reliable. So, as I was saying, the first part, basically, entropy. There is the entropy for the discrete case and the continuous case. We are going to look at the discrete case. For the second part, uh, understand, analyze, and apply error control codes. Error control codes are basically in digital communications, and of course, understand basics of computer communication. So, most, almost all what you are going to do with, actually, all what you're going to do is in the digital communication arena. Uh, then we are going to look. The third one is understand basics of computer communication. This is based on our last part, our last third of the course. We have been given the opportunity to select an area, and the area we are given the opportunity to select is um, computer communication. I mean, the area we have selected in the past uh, has been computer communication, uh, mainly on my advice, and I hope you go with it, because I feel like television system is something is very wide. You can learn from the basics. I don't know whether you have covered the basics of television systems, uh, but it's an area, especially if you go towards the television systems today. Uh, it's an area maybe you can just, if you're interested, you can read on your own. But I thought telephony again, I didn't want to look at it much because with the telephony, uh, today's telephony is actually carried over the computer networks. So probably I thought the one that covers uh, that will give you uh, useful knowledge is the computer communication, because that definitely you're going to read out when you go there. It's talking about a discussion and analysis. Basically, it will be covering topics that will give you uh, good background to do analysis of of a computer communication network. Yeah, we will not do exactly the analysis, because again, to do this analysis, uh, you can do the discussion, you can't do the analysis, because analysis normally means that you might have to look at various models to do the analysis, and mainly the Markov models. So again, I feel like that would be outside the scope of this course. So that is, that will be the third part. That will be the third part. Uh, Sorry, let me just switch off my phone. The required textbooks. The textbooks I've recommended are books you can get free on the net, um, and they cover these topics very well. Different topics are covered by different books, but the books, all the books you need are here, and they are freely available on the net, and probably also in your library. Assignments is just like the 521, 10 for assignments. Sorry, assessment just like 521. So assignment is 10%, continuous assessment is 20%, and main exam is 70%. I will give you at least one assignment, one cut, but usually assignment I may give more than one, but I think last time all the disturbances we did only one. But I'll try to see what I can give you at least two assignments in this unit. Oh, right down there. So the details, these are the details. You can just look through. Um, then tomorrow we can start with the first topic. So we are going to look at the Shannon's mathematical theory of communication. This is a paper that was written by Shannon, I think in the 60s. Yeah, and it forms the basis of today's communication system as you know it. So it does mean there was no communication before, but it formed quite a good basis for for digital communication, especially. Then from there, so you can download this paper and look at it. But in my we'll start by first of all analyzing. What I've done is I've picked some critical um, observations from the paper, uh, and we'll be looking at that. But it's a paper you can look at, and again, it's available freely on the net. Then you're going to look at entropy and mutual information for discrete random variables. The random variables we'll be looking at will basically be the from a discrete memory source. That's what we do with in communication. Yeah, we are not going to look at the solution as a continuous random case. We call it the differential entropy. I've deliberately left it out because it's a bit more detailed. And as I said, in a unit where you're not covering a specific area in communication, we will not be able to go to that depth. So we'll leave out the discrete entropy, the differential entropy, and we'll deal with the discrete case mainly. Then we look at the models of communication channels and systems. That is a part of the information theory. Yeah, because this area is basically covered under what we call information theory in communication, in communication. If you just say in the communication. And actually this falls very well. I can say it falls very well into, if you remember when we started last semester, we looked at what forms a digital communication system, the different blocks. And actually this falls in the first block, source coding. This information theory falls into the source coding, because the case we are going to look at is the source coding based is the application of entropy. So we'll be looking at the source coding um, for the discrete symbols. Yeah. So it falls very well into that uh, digital communication model. I think block diagram. I think we have it. I don't know that is going to appear. I think it was here. I think I have this one. Yeah. So that first part actually falls here. Yeah. And the next part actually falls here. And we already looked at this. So you can see we are covering the digital communication system very well. We are going to cover this. We are going to cover this. Last semester we covered the digital modulation case, but the rest basically was DSP. The rest of the course was actually DSP. So from there we are going to look at error correction, coding, and in your syllabus it talks about error correction, coding, but you also look at error detection, because the first thing you do is you detect errors before you can be able to correct them. So we look at error detection methods in the process, and then we look at the error correction coding. Our approach here is we are going to do error detection techniques for, oh, actually it's mentioned in the details. Techniques in error detection and correction. You may have heard about them in what you have covered, or maybe in other units you have covered. Um, you may have had things like parity, bit, simple parity, bit method for error detection. Very simple, it just involves adding a parity, just adding a bit to whatever you're sending, to a block you're sending, and um, is that what you have added is supposed to help you detect if anything changed in the transmission of your block of bits. I think by now we we are quite familiar. I think we have no doubt about it that when you talk of bits, talk of block of bits, and you talk of packets, it is fully understood. But in the event that it is not, it's always good to ask me to explain. I can explain very well, because my assumption is always that you must have done the basic, and actually you did confirm in the other class that you have done the basic processes of analog to digital communication. So I'm sure that we have no issues with that. So our approach is, of course, we are going to look at error detection and correction. Uh, we'll start with a case whereby we we probably already have we already have uh, a generator matrix, and then we see how you apply the generator matrix to encode the data so that it can help you um, detect and eventually correct the errors that may occur during transmission. So we are going to look at that. Yeah, the case whereby we are given the generator matrix or generator polynomial. And we are going to look at specifically the Hamming code. Yeah, Hamming codes. The Hamming codes. I mean, they are codes. They are a group of codes which can correct a single bit error. So if one bit is in error in a particular block which you have selected, then the Hamming code can be able to detect that. And actually, that is one of these codes. But then we will look at codes which are more powerful in that you can be able to select, you can be able to decide the number of errors you want to correct and put that and design such that you design the number of error checking bits you are going to add so that you can check the number of bits so that you're able to correct the number of bits. I think what I'm saying is with the Hamming code, all Hamming codes, irrespective of the length, can only detect one bit error, not one error. Sometimes I don't like using the word one error. It means whatever block you have selected, you can only correct one if the error is only one bit, or if only one bit is in error. What we are saying is if you decide, of course, by now we know that when you are communicating, you'll be having a continuous stream of bits which have been created from whichever analog uh, signal you have. You have your analog, maybe is a voice, and you're continuously talking, and there will be a need to D converter, which is continuously changing your voice, which is continuous, to zeros and ones. And what we are doing is we are saying those zeros and ones, you can uh, group them into probably, let's say, seven seven bits, especially the case of the Hamming code is 7 bits, or the smallest Hamming code is 7 bits. And for those 7 bits, actually it's not 7 bits, it's 4 bits. That's the smallest. You can pick 4 bits and add 3 bits. So you make a 7-bit code word. Yeah. So you're going to pick 4 bits. So if you have a continuous, you're picking 4 bits at a time and adding 3 bits to each of that 4-bit chunk. Yeah. That will make the smallest Hamming code. The 7/4 Hamming code. It's called 7/4 Hamming code. We are going to see that. 7/4 simply means 4 bits are the message bits, and the 7 is the code word you create from the message bits. So you can see you're doing that by adding 3 bits. That will become 7. So this is smallest Hamming code. Yeah. So we will look at that. Uh, but what we are saying is also after that we are going to look at the case whereby you can choose the number of bits to correct. Yeah. And that's where we come to the PCH code. But to do this, Most of that, to do this, we need to look at the finite fields. So we look at the theory of finite fields. So I don't know whether you have done this with the break structures. It will be, I'll be able to see from your 421 and 422. But you could also have done it under maths. Yeah. But again, I normally assume you haven't done it, so we start by looking at the various, not in so much details, not with so many examples. Look at the various algebraic structures, although that will be the groups, the rings, but our interest is mainly fields and probably rings. Yeah. Uh, and even more so, we'll be looking at a particular uh, um, algebraic structure which is called, the Galois field. That is a finite field um, where you have only two elements, 0 and 1. So we call it the Galois field. We will look at the details of that. Yeah. So we are going to look at the Hamming code. We are not going to look at Galois code because some of these codes are not related to the BCH codes. I'll look at the codes which are bit related because some of these codes will require to look at a different kind of approach. So I decided to leave out Golai. Oh, they are all block codes and they are all algebraic codes, but their approach is different. So just to move on, I may look at them, but I may just mention them, but I will not cover them in details. The Golai, the Gopa, the Fire, uh, and concatenated codes. Again, these ones. So we are going to look at the Hamming, BCH, Reed Solomon, and convolutional codes. We are going to look at those codes. The others we just mention them on the way because again they require a different approach. You can see that the concatenated codes is we are talking of actually applying encoding twice. Yeah. So we just mention it, but we will not go deep. We concentrate on the BCH, yeah, and then the Solomons and the Hamming and convolutional codes. Yeah. So that will be the area of error correction coding. And as I said, it's a very important area in communication because at the end of the day, you're trying to send, you want your data to have integrity, and the most important thing is being able to detect, at least to detect, especially in the cases where you have a return channel. Yeah. So you can inform if you find the data you have received. And again, always remember whenever we talk of receiving data, we are talking about when you receive every packet, you have to decide. Because since we are talking about zeros and ones, those zeros and ones are organized in packets. That's what we call packet communication. So you are trying to decide that you have to decide after every packet whether that packet is a packet that was sent from the transmitter, and if it is not, you would discard it. That is a straightforward case. Just discard it and ask the transmitter to retransmit. And we call that um, backward error correction, because you are going to correct the error by asking the transmitter to transmit. So we look at that, the cases whereby you're only detecting errors. But now you are saying there are cases whereby you don't even have a return channel. So under those circumstances, what would you do? You may need to add enough redundancy. We always call it redundancy because it need not be there. Even whatever we add for error correction, it's a redundancy. Even error detection is redundancy because it need not be there if you are not expecting to have any errors uh, during transmission. Which you know errors will be there, mainly because of noise, the AWGN noise. Yeah. Uh, and maybe somebody can tell us, wow, what do you think is an error in digital communication? Well, are you? You may have covered it or you haven't covered it, but I'm asking for your opinion. What do you think is the error in communication, in digital communications? Yeah. Guess Paul, you can help Ayub. Or can somebody help Ayub and Paul? Just your opinion. If you haven't covered it, that will just be your opinion. What you think would constitute an error? When you say there's an error in digital communication, what are you saying? Yes, Ismail. Yeah, actually, you're right. But to be more specific, it means you are, because remember, digital communication, you only expect two things, a zero or a one. And I think from what you have covered now so far, you know, when you talk about zero, we are talking of the signal that represents a zero. Zero is the data, the signal that represents it, or a one, or rather the signal that represents a one. Yeah, you remember we did uh, line coding where we looked at uh, how you can represent a one, for example, in Manchester, and coding and a zero. So an error would mean the signal you have received is interpreted by your receiver as the opposite signal. Yeah. So when you see error detection, what you're saying is that you have received the data, but actually you only detect the error at the data level, not at the signal level. Yeah. Because it's when you look at the data now you see no, this is not the data that was transmitted. So you put a mechanism that enables you to identify that something is different. we could have received this. Yeah. And that's where things like parity come in, you know. So whatever you're expecting is of a certain parity. So any change of parity, yeah, would mean that there's an error. Yeah. Maybe you had done uh, I don't know whether you have covered any error checking methods. You may not, or you may have dealt with them, but well, you could have dealt with them somehow, maybe in computing. Yeah, because in computing also you do error coding without really explaining what caused it. I think in this unit you are going to go to more depth. Yeah, so that's what errors are, and I think that's where you're going to spend most of our time in error control or error correction coding. And let me put it this way: it's error control coding because that's the general term. Error correction is just one part of it, the correction, but we are going to look at more the error control coding. How do you control errors in a system, in a communication system? Yeah. One method is, of course, where you correct the errors at the receiver. Forward error correction. Yeah. But anyway, it's all saying error correction coding. So even where you ask the transmitter to retransmit is a part of error correction. But most of the effort will be on the error correction at the receiver, which we call forward error correction. Uh, yeah, encoding and decoding algorithms. Well, that's what you're saying. Basically, we'll be talking about uh, the algorithms will come in form of a generator, uh, polynomial, or generator. Yeah, it will be the process that you take through the signal to encode, and the process you take with um, the signal, or rather the data, to discover that your uh, your data is corrupted. Uh, and then, of course, we are going to look at the detailed discussion of this communication, computer communication. That's what we have decided. And oh, I have put some detailed. Um, I think this is just covering, giving more details about this. What is information theory, channel mathematical? I've talked about that. I've talked about the entropy encoding. We are going to look at entropy encoding. We are going to look at the Shannon Fano codes, Huffman codes. There are many codes. There are many entropy encoding codes, but we are going to look at specifically this Shannon Fano and the Huffman codes because they are used a lot. Actually, Huffman codes are used a lot. You can actually go and buy a Huffman encoder as an IC, yeah, especially for encoding voice. So, and not encoding voice, encoding data from a keyboard because those are symbols. Yeah. So you can use a Huffman. Because there are many keyboards that use the Huffman encoder. Yeah. To encode the characters that come from the keyboard. Then of course modules of communication systems and channels and systems. Error correction tools, I think I've already talked about what we are going to look at on the codes. Uh, then we'll come to computer communications. These are the topics that would um, these are topics that would make computer communication. Uh, well, these are some of the topics that will make up computer communication uh, network. But we will specifically look at certain topics. One, we are going to look at the OSI model, which I believe you must have covered it somewhere along the way, at least in introduction to computers. Who has heard of the OSI model? Shabaki. Have you heard of the OSI model? Shabaki.
Yes.
Or you have? The context? Where did you hear it? What were you studying? Are you reading on your own?
No, we did it in high school. Computer.
Oh, you can remember it from high school.
Yeah,
Yeah?
the same.
Okay. Thank you
Yes.
very much, Shabaki. So we are going to look at the OSI model, not at the level of the high school. We look at it a bit more detailed. We try to look at, for example, the packet structures at various layers. Because the OSI model is a layered model. So we are going to look at those structures at various layers. And basically why I chose this one is so long as you are in electrical light current, you are going to encounter networks. Yeah. In fact, most of the jobs you are going to get are likely to be networks. Yeah. Because every organization will have at least a local area network. And we'll also be trying to connect to some wide area network somewhere. So uh, it's one thing you are likely to encounter because you are an engineer, you're not going to look for somebody else. Uh, and by you need to know a lot of skills specific in areas of communication. If you're a electrical engineer, not only communication, because the tendency at the moment now is you don't want to go and employ a heavy current engineer and then a light current engineer. And now it's getting a bit bad because they're trying not to even to employ mechanical engineers. So you are going to find that when you go there, you'll be competing with mechatronics engineers. Yeah. The only advantage they have over you is they have some mechanical knowledge, but you have more advantage because you are covering more in telecommunication and you also cover a bit more in electrical, general electrical, and try to up your skills in IT. It is very important. Yeah, yeah. Try to up your skills in IT because everything you got to encounter there, you find everything is your knowledge of IT is very important because everything has programming. Yeah. Before we used to have what? We used to have receivers, analog receivers. Now analog transmitters. But now we are not even having digital receivers, digital transmitters. Things like modulation are no longer being done with these components. We have gone to software defined radios. So if you are not familiar, with software, you might find yourself once you get that in a weird territory. So it's good to learn. I advise students to do that because I entered the job market as an electrical engineer, and I had to find myself tilting towards IT in my later years because I found everything I was dealing with was needed programming, and I had to get into it in a big way. So that's my advice. Try to get some skills in IT. The good thing about IT is it's easy, you can learn on your own and learn a lot. So we are going to look at the layered model because it is actually that's the basic entry point uh, in communication, in computer communication. Yeah. And of course, that and the last layer model, we are going to look at different protocols, the data link layer protocols. Yeah. We are going to look at flow control. Yeah. Uh, we are going to look at the internet protocol, a very important protocol, because now we are talking about IP over everything. And I think there's a lot to say about this, and I think we can look at this tomorrow morning before we start on our first topic. We can look at I can go through this so you have an idea exactly what it entails. I also have received from a class rep Selfin. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. What you did in 421 and 422. So I think what we do is the usual: post your registration on the chat. And if you have any question, you can also ask. Otherwise, if there are no questions, then we will meet tomorrow morning at 8. I'll send you the link. Have a good day, everyone, and goodbye.